So yeah, it's like they pushed. It's a giant beach ball now. That gold and silver. They're like these giant beach balls that they push down to the very bottom of the ocean. I love that metaphor. I used to use it quite a bit. And I don't know who said it first. It might have been David Morgan, but whoever used it first, it's very apt because we know what happens when you put a big beach ball and that has air in it to the bottom of the sea. The more you push it down, the more you manipulate it, the higher it's going to go. And again, it's not that it's gold and silver price are going higher. It's that the dollar in particular, but also the euro and the pounds. We've seen the pound already has been devalued quite a bit in recent years. They're all going to be massively devalued.
Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. This interview is being recorded on October 4th, 2023. And today it's a little bit of better late than never because the guest that I have on, Mark O'Byrne, I have read and listened to him for many years about gold and silver. He's really a specialist and expert in gold and silver internationally. He's the founder of GoldCore, which I think still is probably one of the biggest gold dealers in Ireland. And more recently, he's founded a mint called Tara Coins. So it's really great to have you on the channel, Mark. How are you?
I'm very good. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mario. And I've enjoyed your work over the years as well. So it's a pleasure to be on with you at long last.
Yeah, thank you for that. And maybe you could tell the viewers first a little bit of your background and how you got into gold and silver and what you're doing now. And then maybe later we'll talk about what's going on in the world as well.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so I actually studied history in UCD. Initially, it was archaeology, mythology, and sort of ancient history, including Greek and Roman civilization. And I was always interested by the rise and fall of civilizations and indeed of empires. So I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading it and going into the library and reading about, how civilization evolved and how empires came about and how they declined. And there was a common denominator, which is metals in different shapes, particularly precious metals and gold and silver. There's a common denominator in terms of more advanced civilizations tended to use precious metals, not just as money and as currency, but for a whole variety of different things. And they had quite a healthy relationship with metals, shall we say. But what would tend to happen then over time is power would be concentrated in the hierarchies, and they would tend to try and monopolize particularly the precious metals, the gold and the silver, So, and that led to currency debasement. So I became aware of that, excuse me, quite a young age. And excuse me, I've got something caught in my throat here. My brunch went down the wrong way. So yeah, I became aware of that at a young age, and I was very passionate about history, and I was thinking about lecturing and teaching, and then my dad came along and he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. He offered me a senior position in his company, which is an employment agency, and I didn't really grab me a whole lot. But he said to me, "Listen, you can go traveling for 3-6 months of the year, and then you can sort of half run the business for 3-6 months of the year." And I'll pay you well. And I said, okay, that sounds good, because I wanted to go backpacking and see a bit of the world, and go to Asia, and go to the Americas. And so I did that for a number of years, but there was a bit of sort of young bull, old bull. It was his business, and he was he knew what worked, and I wanted to do other things in the business and be a bit more creative, and I felt a bit stifled in terms of creativity. So in the end, we decided, okay, and I started probably a bit like you. I started buying gold and silver in the very early, actually 2001. It was September 11th was actually I was sort of looking at it and thinking, and then September 11th happened. And I said, wow, this is very big, and this is the trajectory of the world, I think, will be badly impacted by this terrible event, So I started buying then. I started buying from guys who, gold investments in there in London with Oliver and his dad, lovely family. I started buying from them, and I started buying from other people in the UK, and I started buying from other people in the US. And at the time, I was quite impressed with them as individuals, but there was no one I didn't feel who was positioning gold as an investment in a portfolio. And at the time, I thought it should be positioned versus stocks and bonds and property. There was obviously, developing property manias at the time. So I said, there's an opportunity here, and I felt tech-wise, they weren't they hadn't, a lot of the gold dealers and coin dealers hadn't really embraced tech, you know. So I said, right, there's an opportunity here. So basically, I set up GoldCore in. I was researching it. I bought all the books on gold and the how-tos and the ABCs of gold in 2002. I was researching it, and then founded the company in 2003. And yeah, we became the biggest gold broker, coins, bars. We did certificates for a period of time, and then we stopped doing them and focused on the physical. So the biggest broker in Ireland, and one of the biggest brokers in the UK and Ireland, and well known internationally. I did a market update nearly every single day for nearly 17 years, probably 16 years actually. And because I was quite passionate about it, and I felt people, the mainstream media wasn't covering it effectively, and as factually maybe as it should have been, or as comprehensively. So I felt there's an opportunity here to educate people. So the market update was very much just trying to help people understand why they should. At the time, it was a sort of investment, but then gradually over the years, I sort of saying, well, it's not actually investment because there's no yield. It's either a speculation if you buy it in certain ways, or it's a store of value if you buy it in the safest way, which is obviously physical coins and bars. So yeah, we pivoted very much. GoldCore pivoted towards coins and bars, and both delivery and storage. So we did a lot. We grew. Basically, the clients had outright legal ownership of the gold. I was very passionate that it's gold is a safe haven asset and a safe haven money, but only if you own it in the safest of ways. So you have to have it fully allocated and fully segregated, and the safest jurisdictions in the world, which I did a lot of research and looked at the different countries in the world, and basically we narrowed it down to primarily Singapore and Hong Kong. Singapore, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Switzerland, but Hong Kong was the third on the list. And then obviously there was issues with Hong Kong in terms of protests and all the rest. So we focused then on allowing people to move from Hong Kong. We focused on Switzerland and Singapore. And so today, so I was very passionate about that. But it was funny, I was always selling large Swiss gold bars and silver bars from metal ore and the different refineries. And then I was selling, obviously, Britannias and gold sovereigns were a big thing I was selling in the early days, gold sovereigns, gold Krugerrands. And then more recent years, the silver Eagles and Maples and silver Britannias. But I was always curious as to why in Ireland there was no mint. There's no mint in Ireland except for the National Mint, which is obviously the Central Bank of Ireland, and they have a monopoly on the minting of coins. But I was always interested that they never did bullion coins, and I actually got onto them years ago and said, "You guys should do bullion coins." They don't want to do it for whatever reason, So I always knew there was an opportunity there, and because well, why not? I mean, the Australians have their coins, the English have their coins, the Americans have their coins, the Austrians even in Austria have their coins. So I basically set up Tara coins. So it's not a mint per se. In time, I do hope to have a mint here in Ireland, and then they will be quintessentially Irish. At the moment, they're designed by me and artists and people who are very aware of the culture and the mythology and the history of Ireland. I've had a lot of advice in terms of making the coins or medals, as they are, non-legal tender coins. I mean, to me, a coin is a coin. If it's metal and it's round, it's a coin. But technically, in the industry, they call coins have to be legal tender. So yeah, you can call them whatever you want to call them. They're medals, rounds, or non-legal tender coins. So they're quintessentially Irish, but I had to outsource the minting of the coins to Germany for the moment. And I did my research, and Geiger Del Metal they did do some of the most beautiful coins in the marketplace, and they have a very sophisticated manufacturing, production, minting operation near Leipzig in Germany. So, and they're LBMA approved. So I'm working with them guys. I'm very impressed with them and the coins they've made. Those coins that you see there on the screen, and thank you for showing them, Mario. Yeah, so they're BU, they're bullion uncirculated rounds, medals, or non-legal tender coins. But the finish on them is actually closer to a proof coin. They're near proof, but we're selling them at bullion prices. So that's it. Yeah, it's going well. It's wholesale. I think I said to you that the model is to design the coins, and then wholesale the coins into the biggest and the smaller dealers around the world. So I must go back to Oliver in Gold Investments and have a chat with him. I haven't got a chance to go to him yet, but they're with bullion by post in the UK. And in the US, it's free insured delivery in the US with bullion by post. With most of the big dealers here, well, there's no really big dealers in Ireland, but they're with most of the dealers here in Ireland, and they're being sold by Celtic Gold in Germany. And basically, I'm looking for distributors internationally. So you have a very good following internationally, so it might help me. Some of your listeners might be interested in becoming distributors, you know. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I guess, yeah, Oliver would definitely like to probably keep those as well for sale. I mean, it's an interesting size, a 1/10 of an ounce, 3.1 grams. And yeah, because gold is becoming so much more valuable, that an ounce of gold pretty soon, yeah, you'll be able to do a lot with it, and you don't want to carry that around as much. So with GoldCore, I guess I think you sold off your ownership in 2020.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it was. I mean, it's a great business, and but I suppose I got jaded because I was doing the market update. I was doing a lot of the marketing, the communications. And I just, between the lockdowns and the so-called pandemic, I just said life's too short. I wanted to spend time with family, you know. My dad was quite ill at the time, and he subsequently passed on. So, and I have young children, so I just wanted to spend as much time with family as possible. So, yeah, Stephen, my partner, basically, he bought me out. We created a win-win deal there. It's a little bit of pain on both sides, but I think it was more a win-win for both of us. So yeah, I still have a lot of time for GoldCore, and I hope they will be distributors of the coin in time. We still have a conversation, and I think they will be fairly soon. Is my understanding. So yeah, but yeah, it was. I did have a graw is the word we use. I suppose it was a labor of love that I did want to have, and I think every nation in time should have their own coins, you know, their own rounds or medals, whatever you want to call them, you know, and they don't really have to be legal tender. It's quite interesting that I think as the market evolves, you know, in GoldCore we were very much focused on LBMA bars. And legal tender coins, and for certain countries, obviously in the UK, you know, Britannia's and sovereigns, there is this, it's obviously there's a no VAT, and then there's a CGT advantage as well. So there has been more focus on the legal tender coins, but I think that will change in time. It's interesting, the US, the rounds always had a much lower premium than the bullion coins, the legal tender coins. But that's narrowed in recent years now. And some of the rounds are actually much the same prices. As I say, the Britannia's is an example. The Eagles have a higher premium, but some of the US rounds have a similar premium to Britannia's and some of the other legal tender coins. So I think in time, as the market evolves, I think people are going to realize the intrinsic value, you know, the real value is the intrinsic value of gold and silver, obviously. And it's the value that we put in it. And if we value gold and silver, which our community does, and I think the wider market will as well in time, then we value specific types of rounds, metals, or coins, or whatever we want to call them. That's what ultimately gives it value. So I think these Tara coins, I think in time they will command a premium, and I think they will, you know, in terms of the bid offer spread, in terms of buying and selling, I think they'll be liquid. And I think to be a good store of value for people. And as you said, I'm going with 1 ounce silver because silver, I believe, is still probably the most undervalued assets in the world, or form of money in the world. And gold is still very, very cheap as well. And I think they're both, it's not, as you know, and as you outline, it's not really that they're going up per se in this inflation of the money supply. It's that we're inflating the money supply now, not just through printing paper, but more particularly through creating one with, you know, 12 zeros, which is a trillion. You know, we're just creating trillions and trillions and trillions. Just go on a keyboard like them, they just create trillions, you know, whereas it's a lot of work. People have no idea the amount of work that goes into. I actually created a video recently about the process of creating a coin, you know, the manufacturing, the processing, and the minting. It's a very intensive procedure. Not to mention, obviously, the mining as well that goes on prior to that. So they have a value. They have a real value. They always will have a value, and Silver's undervalued, but yeah, as you said, so, and 1 ounce is a lovely size, or a tube is still it's very affordable for people. But I do think gold is going to go, in this gold reset that's coming. I've been expecting for a while, and I've been wrong. But as we know, it's all cyclical, and we're on the verge. I think in the coming months or few short years, I think we will have the reset when gold goes to 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, whatever number it is. And there'll probably be a few resets, and initially you might see it go up to 10,000 type of thing. But I think the 0.1 ounce is a lovely size for people. It's just so much more affordable for the mainstream people, and making it more accessible to people. So yeah, they're a lovely size, and they're even smaller than I like the sovereigns because they're the 1/4 ounce. But these are smaller again, and I think it's a nice way for even newbies who have never bought gold before because they've seen it as inaccessible. I think the new entrance marketplace, it's because it's just funny. It's like a gateway drug for people. It's that eureka moment when they get that first thing into their hand, or gold and silver. There's an energetic thing that happens, and they go, aha, now I get it,
That was like in 2002 for me when I bought a Kruger end the first time, and
yeah. Yes. I think it was the same with me. I think it was Kruger and the Sovereigns, and it was. I actually, when I look back, I like a lot of people. We're programmed in different ways, and I had quite an unhealthy relationship with money in general, particularly gold and silver. I thought it was the money of empire, so it actually put me off it, and when I look back, I had almost a socialistic mindset about what money and currency is, because of the education system and the programming of society. But sometimes, yeah, as I said, when you get it into your hand and you have a proper conversation with someone and you talk about it, it's the penny drops for people. It literally the penny drops. I think that expression, and there's a ka-ching moment. It's they sort of go, oh, okay, yeah, now I get it. I've seen it so many times with people, whether it be people coming into the office, or indeed with journalists who I knew were almost anti-gold and very pro fiat currency. Fiat currencies are pro the current system in some ways, and I've seen them write things that were quite negative on gold, and then you'd see it in their eyes, they sort of go, oh, okay. Yeah, it's very, very interesting when that happens,
It's interesting you're speaking about your history background and the Roman Empire, and how eventually the coinage of Rome, the people at the top controlled it. They were able to debase it. I mean, I think by the 4th century, there was almost no silver left in the denarius.
Yeah.
I think most people think that governments created gold and silver, not created it, but used it as money. But I think they've hijacked it, just like Murray Rothbard talks about in his "What Has Government Done to Our Money." So when you said about legal tender coins, I think that's part of this hijacking that the people at the top do, because if you look back at the origin of the silver dollar, it's from the Spanish dollar. And the Spanish dollar, the origin is Joachim's Thaler, who was a nobleman in, I think, Bohemia, in
the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Yeah.
And he minted his own silver coins, just like excuse me, just like you're beginning to do now. I know that you got someone doing it for you, but eventually you might become, the Joachim's Thaler of Ireland. And why do we need?
Not?
If the rounds or coins are good, why do you need legal tender? So I personally think legal tender. My wish is that we won't have legal tender in the future, and people will just transact with whatever gold or silver coins or rounds, if you want to call them, they want.
I think so. I think that will happen, and this should happen internationally. And I think there will be a movement. It's funny with the microbreweries, those giant monopoly mints, giant monopoly breweries. Now, in recent years, there was a huge move to the microbreweries, and why wouldn't we have a micro mints? So that would be very beneficial for society in terms of having a more robust monetary system that isn't monocultural or mono, it's risky to be dependent on any one currency, particularly any one digital currency, and with the risk of CBDCs now as well. So we need to be diversified, and the word diversification is always used in terms of stocks and bonds and investments, but you apply it to precious metals as well, and ultimately to the forms of money that we use amongst each other. So yeah, no, it's fascinating what you said there about even the Roman Empire and the denarius, and that became the word dinero comes from that, which is the Spanish word for money. And nearly every single word, not every single one, but many languages, the word, it's interchangeable. The word for money and silver is interchangeable. So plata is another example. It's money and it's silver. L'argent en français. Here in Ireland, it's arrogant. And it's interesting, AG is the chemical symbol. So in Ireland, it's AG, arrogant, is the old Irish word for both silver and money, because the people use silver as money, throughout history. And I think gold was used actually more, they knew it was more valuable. They knew instinctually it was 10, 15, 20 times more. It depends where you were geographically, obviously, but there was a lot more trade going on amongst people. So instinctually they knew the ratios maybe 5, 10, 20, 30 times. So gold tended to be used by the elites, and there were good elites as well. Right now, the elites are quite corrupt, but sometimes we had good elites in history, and they would use it for ceremonial purposes. Or, the crown was made of gold, and there were good kings and there were bad kings, and good queens and bad queens, So gold tended to be used more in that way, but silver was very much the money of the people, And the rupee is another example. Obviously, in India, in the Sanskrit rupee is money, and I believe as well yuan. There's a connection between the yuan linguistically and as a small piece of silver, So yeah, and I think we'll be money again. I think it's only a matter of time,
And yeah, talking about the Roman Empire, and it's funny because there's a meme going on now that people say, "Oh, how many times do you think of the Roman Empire a day?" But we switch to the present empire, the American Empire. And I noticed, because yesterday my video I covered the U.S. debt clock a little bit, and I saw that the debt was at 33 trillion. I think 155 billion. And today someone noticed that the debt had jumped to 33 trillion 433 billion. So almost 300 billion jump in one day. So
Wow.
maybe you could talk a little bit about that and what's going on also in the bond market, what's going on with the BRICS, and what do you think as well about those people who talk about, well, I've spoken about gold manipulation and silver many times, because I noticed, Mark, when I bought gold the first time in 2002, I worked at a trading desk trading government bond futures, but I could notice that there was some, at the same time every day, gold did a certain thing, and other markets, they were much more random. They traded more freely. And I've always been, I've always been suspicious. So there's a few questions I have for you.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I'll start with the meaty part at the end there. Yeah, I mean, it's been documented, that they have manipulated gold and silver for years. They use the futures market to manipulate the price. It's very easy to do when you have access to unlimited capital on the trading desks in Wall Street, whether you're JP Morgan or wherever else. And you've got young kids who are just willing to keep a job and will take instruction to short a market at a certain time, and they can sell billions worth of contracts in a short period of time, and they can move the price around wherever they want in the very, very short term. And we've seen this again in recent days. I mean, there was no reason whatsoever for gold and silver to suddenly fall to the degree that they did in recent days. Sorry, I shouldn't say there was no reason whatsoever. The mainstream media is saying that the reason is because interest rates have gone higher, the bonds have been sold off, and the interest rates have gone higher, the yields have gone higher in the bonds, and therefore this was a reaction to that. That has been happening for the last few weeks, you know. So why was it all of a sudden, 2 or 3 days ago? I used to look at this in very detail day by day, you know. So I knew instinctually, and I knew from looking at it. So I don't know the timeline of it in recent days, but it was quite sudden out of the blue. Frequently it starts in Asia in when markets are a little less liquid, you know. But anyway, the bottom line is this used to be a conspiracy theory, but then J.P. Morgan were actually found guilty. Traders, were sentenced. But as usual, it tends to be they get a little, slap on the wrist, and they get a little fine, which is equivalent to profits from the trading desk for a few days type of thing, you know. So there's no real incentive for them to stop. So it has been documented by GATA, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, by Chris Powell and Bill Murphy, and by a lot of other people. There's actual whole books written about this now, you know. So it's there. The evidence, all the evidence is there. So we have to be honest about this and truthful about this. So yeah, it's there, but it's so self-defeating. It will never work. So it's actually creating a huge opportunity for us all, and we shouldn't get okay. We're right to be angry and irritated because it creates huge distortions in the marketplace, and it will create potentially create hyperinflation and massive devaluation of our fiat currencies. You know, so we're right to be a little bit angry about it. At the same time, we should see it as an opportunity. And because it does allow us to both protect ourselves and our families and our friends and communities, and to do the work that you're doing, which is to educate people about the risks during the world, you know. And so yeah, it's like they pushed. It's a giant beach ball now. That gold and silver, they're like these giant beach balls that they push down to the very bottom of the ocean. I love that metaphor. I used to use it quite a bit. I don't know who said it first. It might have been David Morgan, but whoever used it first, it's very apt, because we know what happens when you put a big beach ball, that has air in it to the bottom of the sea. The more you push it down, the more they manipulate it, the higher it's going to go. And again, it's not that it's gold and silver price are going higher. It's that the dollar in particular, but also the euro and the pounds. We've seen the pound already is been devalued quite a bit in recent years. They're all going to be massively devalued. Because this is what happens, there's nothing new under the sun. It's been seen throughout history. Every single fiat currency system, ultimately the currency gets very, very badly devalued, and frequently goes to zero, and the dollar is then whatever it is, I don't know now, 99.9%. I mean, that's crazy that it went up 300 billion overnight. I mean, that in itself, if you don't join the dots there now, because it's funny how people, very sophisticated people who know their finance, but they don't join the dots into the monetary side of things, and they don't make that connection, but how anybody thinks that the dollar and the euro and the pound are not going to be badly devalued, and we're not going to have massive inflation or stagflation or hyperinflation or combination thereof. I don't know when the debt is increasing at 300 billion in a day. Like, I mean, it's just that used to be in a year, obviously, and then it was in a month. And it's out of control, it really is, and it's the way all empires
Here
go.
it is today. I mean, it's a snapshot because I took a screenshot. 33, it's probably not a bit more now, but if you go back yesterday, 33,155, and that was my video from a day ago. So yeah,
crazy. So yeah, that's a brilliant. I love that debt clock. I used to use that quite frequently.
Gives you a headache, doesn't it?
Yeah, if you're looking for too long.
Now.
Yeah. It should be. They should have that on the Bloomberg ticker. That's a good idea. And CNBC, So, and there used to be a few people, like they used to, in fairness, I used to get on Bloomberg and CNBC and talk about these things. And I was never censored, and I was always surprised, but they used to have Mark Faber and Jim Rogers and a few people, but I don't think they have those people on as much as maybe they do. I'm not tuning into the mainstream media as much as I used to. My sense is that they started getting seduced by Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies, and they almost positioned Bitcoin as the new gold, which is total nonsense, So, and I'm not anti-Bitcoin, I'm a libertarian. I want people to use whatever they want to use as currency and as a store of value and a saving and as an exchange amongst people. They should use whatever they want. And there are properties of Bitcoin that mimic the properties of gold in terms of the rarity and the finite nature of it. But there's a lot of risk in Bitcoin as well. I hope it succeeds, as I am a libertarian. But the whole digital risk in the world there's a lot of digital risk, a lot of cyber risk, and there's issues with computers and devices and Wi-Fi and the electrical grid, a whole host of different things. And the next generation of world warfare. I read in the front page of Financial Times. Probably 15 years ago, they were talking about EMP, electromagnetic pulse. So that technology is there with the Chinese and the Russians, and with the Americans, and they can use it against each other, and they can take down grids and take down, exchanges and commodity exchanges and all sorts of crazy things can happen. I hate to point out worst case scenarios, but that precious metals are a form of insurance. So, it's like saying that you could have a car crash. Hopefully these worst case scenarios don't happen, but these are very real risks, as we know. We have to acknowledge them and not pay too much attention to them and not allow ourselves to be disabled by it. We have to just get on our lives. It is like insurance. You buy that insurance. When you buy the car insurance, it's just done. You've ticked that box and then you get on with your lives and you go play golf or I watched some of your videos recently. You were in the golf club. That's the thing. We have to just get on with our lives and just enjoy it, because it's short. It's short, and that's how we get through this. There's a lot of fear amongst people who buy gold sometimes, and it's understandable, because they're very aware of these risks and they're trying to. A lot of the time, they're trying to help other people understand it, and then they get frustrated as the people don't understand it, because
that's why I think it's so emotional market gold and silver, because before I bought gold, I didn't really think much of gold, and then but I do remember my dad bought some gold in the late 80s, and it didn't really do anything, and he sold it later on in the early 90s, but. Apart from that, it was only when I bought it and you have that eureka moment. It's almost like when I started playing golf, when I hit the first ball well, it was the eureka moment. And I've been hooked with golf since I was 15 and with gold since 2002. And then you look into it, you read all about it, the history, and you realize that people are getting shortchanged with fiat currency, and I think that's why it's so emotional. I don't know what you think about that.
No, it's a great way of putting it. They are being shortchanged, and even the last financial crisis, I was warning about it in 2004, 2005. I could see it as clear as day follows night. It was cyclical. We were going to have a big recession. And you try and tell, even close family, I'd be trying to tell my loved ones saying, this is coming, and I'd be giving them all the information and a huge amount of information to give them, and giving them whole books, There was Bill Bonner and these guys who I was following, and I said, here, have a look at this book, And they kept buying property at the top, and then they got into negative equity and financial problems, and then they come 2 years later, and I said, geez, you're right, I wish I listened to you, And now it's the same thing has happened again, And I'm like, this is the exact same as 2006, 7, 8. We're on the verge of some really big things. And Lehman Brothers was huge, but they managed to kick the can down the road, as we know. But we all said they kicked the can down the road. Even the officialdom and the central banks and the mainstream media acknowledged we kicked the can down the road back in 2009, 10, 11, 12. Well, we're very clear at the end of the road when it's increasing. I'm actually, my brain boggles. It was 300 billion. You said overnight in the day. Like that's not even a week. That's
just
24 hours.
Just under 300 billion. Yeah, I mean, 4 hours, because I did the video yesterday. It was 33,155, and now it's 33,444. So
yeah. So yeah, it's just not. You cannot that data point alone, but there's so many data points. That's the thing, if you join all these dots, the property markets are again turning over, but there's a lot of other indicators as well, and even Warren Buffett, of all people. Warren Buffett was warning about the last financial crisis, about 2005. He was warning about the subprime and that, I think. So he's warning about the property market now, So the mainstream guys are beginning who've been cheerleading this thing for the last, 3-5 years, even though it's completely unsustainable. So I mean, the writing's on the wall, but it's sad that people are they just, they make the same mistakes again, and they don't. I think it's because the propaganda is so strong, and it is a little bit like a matrix that they're plugged into, and you have to step back at it and just go, hang on a second, let's look at this rationally. Let's look at the data. Let's look a little bit of history and the cyclical nature of finance and of markets. So yeah, we are on the verge of, and hopefully, there's a lot of doom and gloom on our side as well, and I think it's going to be very painful financially, economically, and monetarily in the next few months and few years. But I think we could get out of this 3, 5. I'm not like Dark Ages, end of the Roman Empire, barbarian sort of, even Mad Max Armageddon stuff. I think it's going to be very messy, and I think there could be, we've already seen, civil unrest, and in big cities, there could be issues in terms of martial law for periods of time, and we saw quite draconian policies during the lockdowns, obviously. So there's real risk there, but I do think that wisdom will prevail. I think there's a lot more. Not everybody in officialdom is completely corrupt, and I think they're beginning to ask questions themselves about some of the things that have happened in recent years. And I think, so I do think, yeah, I think it's going to be a short, sharp shock, and I think the men and the women are going to step up to the plate, and I think there's going to say, hang on a second, this is just not right, and what is really in our both our national interests and our interests as a species, and what is in humanity's interest in men, women, and children. What works and what doesn't work, and a lot of stuff of recent years doesn't work. So I think we're going to get back on track, and it sounds a little bit utopian as I say it, but I do think that, but we're going to get a good. Sorry, that's my iPhone getting turned sideways. We're going to get a good smack. I was going to say we're going to get a good smack up the side of the head. It's like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get a punch in the face. So there's going to be a lot of people feeling like they got punched in the face, and they're going to get a shock and a rude awakening. But that's what we need as a society now, I think, unfortunately. We need a good sharp shock, and then we'll get back on track. But the world will change. I think it is moving to a multipolar world. And that will create just challenges. There's a lot of challenges, don't get me wrong. But by having gold and silver, a little bit of land if you can, diversify, but have more tangible assets, but particularly have gold and silver as that sort of store of value. And I think as potentially as a means of exchange, I think we need to be having conversations with the local farmers or the local farmers market, and not being as dependent on the Tesco's and the large corporations, that we can actually start trading amongst ourselves, and that's a good thing to do, whether we have a crisis or not, So sorry, I'm going on a bit there, but yeah, so we will come through it. But yeah, gold and silver the bottom line is what do they do? What's their purpose? Purpose is basically to it's their stores of value, and they will give people peace of mind when we come into these uncertain times, because even me talking about it now, I feel butterflies in my stomach talking about it, about these potential scenarios. But no, it's all happening for a higher good. We just need to realize that, and just go with the flow, keep doing what you're doing, keep talking, keep empowering people, and empowering each other and helping each other and create these communities. I think our communities need to come together more. Actually, the digital stuff is great, and it's been great because me and you couldn't have talked like this only a few short years ago. But I think having more events in person and more networking and I think. That knowledge that we have needs to be imparted into the wider community, and I think that would be very, very valuable indeed once that happens.
Yeah, great. Just one final question, because I don't think you have to add anymore. That was really good. But will the Fed let everything implode, or are they going to come in again and do QE? And if they do that, what would happen? What's your it's hard to know what they're going to do, but your feeling.
Yeah, I honestly don't know, and I tell you, I don't think they know, because there's a lot of assumptions sometimes that all these so-called elites, they're all on the same page and they're all evil and they're all doing it. They're not. There's some of them who are evil, but the majority of them are not. The majority of them are just people who are driven by ego, and they're not, some aren't bad people per se. It's just a lack of consciousness, you know. So I think there's actually a lack of consensus amongst the central banks themselves. I could be wrong on this. Maybe it's naive. I hope, but I do think that there are some people who are saying, "Hang on a second, is this right? Should we be doing this?" Um, and it may not be in the Fed per se, but it could be in other central banks. So I'm just talking about in official, monetary circles. I think there are probably debates being had. And I think there's actually, even around the CBDCs, I think some of the banks aren't on board. There's a lot of vested interests, and the stakeholders, Klaus Schwab and these nut jobs in the World Economic Forum, these people are trying to manipulate a lot of the powerful players, all the vested interests in the corporations and in the banks and in the central banks. And they're trying to create consensus, but I don't think there is as much consensus as sometimes we think there is, you know. And even the CBDCs, I think some of the banks themselves are saying, "Hang on a second, oh, here for real?" Like, you know, and do all the executives in the Wall Street banks want CBDCs? I don't think they do, because they'll be disintermediated. Most of the banks in the world, a lot of their business model is gone, and they become just brokerages, which is fine for some of the banks. But so I just don't think, even in the Western world, let alone in the wider world, have they got the stakeholders on board, you know. And they talk about the stakeholders, but they haven't actually spoken to the stakeholders about this. And they're trying to, you know, by stealth, bring in these CBDCs and pilot them in various countries. But there's a huge impediments in terms of buy-in by the powerful stakeholders, and also in terms of the technology, you know, and then the public adoption. So sorry, your question in terms of QE, interest rates, I don't think they know themselves. It can go different ways. And I think there's so many variables there. You know, even the stuff with the war in Iraq and Iran, the geopolitics, all these things, they all, you know, feed in on top of each other, and they all influence each other, you know. So there's so many variables there that I don't think they know. But the bottom line is we just don't know, and we just, you know, have to take it day by day and week by week. And there's also the risk that we could have deflation as well in the short term, because the property markets are turning over, you know. And there are some people saying, I tend to think we'll have more stagflation, and at risk of very serious inflation and potentially even hyperinflation, the worst case scenario. But there are people saying that, you know, if property markets turn over, we could see quite serious property crashes, which could contribute to a period of deflation. But I think that period of deflation will be relatively short-lived, and I think they can potentially get back to inflation reasonably quickly, you know. So that's a long way of saying, yeah, I don't know, Mario. And I think we all have to be humble about this.
I know.
Yeah.
I agree. It just seems like now they're like, the Fed is, yeah, if there's a saying, don't fight the Fed. And I think this time, I'm not sure they're going to come to the rescue, because maybe they realize if they do start QE again, that's the end of the whole thing as well. But if they don't start it, it could end too. So, Mark, thank you very much for your time. It was really nice meeting you, well, on Zoom.
Yeah.
Once face to face.
I look forward to that, sure.
And maybe you could tell the viewers where they can find, I don't know if you still write, but the website for Tara Coins.
Yes, taracoins.com. And I'm not doing too much. This is actually one of the first interviews I've done recently, but I'm going to do some more in the coming weeks and months. So, and I do hope to do a little bit more writing again. I think I did it so much for so many years. I got jaded with it, but I do want to write a bit, but probably do something once a month. So yeah, they can get me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, the Instagram. I don't know what happened to Instagram. Instagram disappeared there recently, so we'll have to do that again. So taracoins.com. Yeah, and they can buy from Bullion by Post in the UK and in the US. And the dealers in Ireland, and I'm working on. Yeah, might get on to Oliver right now actually. So there'll be dealers. It's you'll see it on the top of the page actually. Yeah, where to buy, and that's it. Yeah, taracoins.com. And yeah, absolute pleasure being on with you, Mario. And yeah, thank you for having me on. And yeah, keep up the good work you are doing. I come across you a few times over the years, and I've always enjoyed you. You know, so because it's just. Yeah, it's the facts, it's the truth, and it's all there, and the history, the historical context is important, and sometimes without that, people can get bamboozled by modern economics and modern paradigms and narratives, you know. So anyway, keep up the good work, and I look forward to meeting you. Yeah, you're welcome in Ireland anytime. Play a game of golf.
Thank you, and take care. Bye.
All the best.